Try to remember your first birthday. Go on. Try. You can't. Nobody can. Not the cake, not the candle, not the faces of the people who loved you most in that room. Somewhere in your skull, an entire year of your life is missing, and you have never once questioned why. But the real answer is far stranger than you were just too young. Our brain was working perfectly that day. Your eyes saw. Your ears heard. Your skin felt the warmth of the room. Somewhere, a memory was formed. And then, without your permission, it was erased. Not lost. Erased. On purpose. This gap has a name. Scientists call it infantile amnesia. And for over a century, it has been one of the strangest unsolved mysteries sitting quietly inside your own head. Sigmund Freud noticed it first, back in the early 1900s. He wasn't studying memory directly. He was listening to his patients describe their childhoods, and he kept hitting the same wall. Adults could recall almost nothing before the age of 3 or 4. Freud had a theory, and it was a dark one. He believed the missing years were repressed on purpose, buried because early childhood was, in his view, full of desires and conflicts too disturbing for the adult mind to look at directly. It's a compelling story. Dr. Burius drama. Mind protects itself. Case closed. Except it's wrong. Modern neuroscience has spent the last few decades quietly dismantling Freud's explanation, and what it found instead is far more interesting than repression. It isn't that your brain hid those memories from you, it's that your brain at that age was physically incapable of filing them away in the first place. Here's what the T means. Think of your memory system as a library, not the books, the library itself. The shelves, the catalog system, the little card that tells you where every book lives. When you were an infant, that library was still under construction. The shelves weren't built yet. The part of your brain responsible for this is called the hippocampus, a small seahorse-shaped structure buried deep near the center of your skull. It's the region that takes a moment of experience and converts it into a memory you can retrieve later. In an infant, the hippocampus is still growing new neurons at an explosive rate. New cells are being born and wired in constantly. And here's the twist. That explosive growth might actually be the reason memories don't stick. A researcher named Paul Frankland, working out of the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, ran a series of experiments on this exact question using mice. Young mice, still in their rapid brain growth phase, showed the same pattern human infants show. They could learn something, react to it in the moment, and then completely lose access to it days later. When Franklin's team slowed down the rate of new neuron growth in young mice, the memories became more stable. When they sped up neuron growth in older mice, memories that should have stuck around started slipping away instead. Sit with that for a second. The very thing that makes a baby's brain such a phenomenal learning machine, generating new neurons faster than at any other point in life, might be the same thing wiping the hard drive before anything can be permanently saved. But here's where it gets stranger. Infants aren't blank. They're not walking around empty-headed, absorbing nothing. A researcher named Carolyn Rovey Collier spent years proving the opposite. In her studies, she tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a mobile hanging above the crib. The baby would kick, the mobile would spin, and astonishingly, babies as young as 2 or 3 months old learned the connection almost immediately. Kick, mobile moves. They remembered it too. Days later, put back under that same mobile, they'd start kicking again before it even moved, anticipating the result. So the memory was there. It existed. I just wasn't built to last. And it wasn't built to be consciously recalled the way you recall what you had for breakfast this morning. This is the part most people get wrong. They assume infantile amnesia means babies can't learn. What it actually means is babies form a different kind of memory. Psychologists split memory into 2 broad categories. There's explicit memory, the kind you can consciously describe in words, like naming your childhood address. And there's implicit memory, the kind that shapes your behavior without you ever narrating it to yourself, like knowing how to ride a bike without thinking through the physics. Infants are drowning in implicit memory. What they're missing is the explicit kind, and there's a very specific reason why. Explicit memory needs language, not entirely, but heavily. A researcher named Patricia Bauer, who has spent decades studying memory development in young children, found that a child's ability to verbally narrate an experience is tightly linked to whether that experience survives into long-term, retrievable memory. Before a child has the words for yesterday, or before or after, their brain has no scaffolding to hang an event on. The experience happens, and happens fully, but there's no sentence built yet to store it inside. Think about what that means for your own missing years. It's not that nothing happened to you before age 3. Plenty happened. You were held, you were spoken to, you were scared and comforted and delighted over and over again. Your brain simply hadn't developed the narrative tools yet to package those moments into something your future adult self could pull back out. There's a modern mirror to all of this, and it's closer than you think. Have you ever had a conversation you were fully present for, fully engaged in, and then 2 days later realized you can't recall a single specific line of it? Not because you weren't paying attention, because your brain, in that ordinary moment, made a quiet decision that this particular experience wasn't worth the cost of permanent storage. Your brain does this every single day on a smaller scale, for the exact same reason it did it constantly when you were an infant. Memory isn't a camera. It's a filter, deciding in real time what deserves to survive. Sleep plays a role in this filtering too. During deep sleep, your brain replays the events of your day, strengthening some connections and letting others fade. Infants sleep an enormous amount, up to 16 hours a day, and researchers now suspect that same replay process is happening in them constantly, just without the language-based tagging system that would let the replayed content resurface later as a conscious memory. So here's the strange truth sitting underneath your entire childhood. You weren't unconscious. You weren't empty. You were a fully feeling, fully learning, fully present human being, wrapped in a brain that was simply too busy building itself to also be your permanent record keeper. And maybe that's not something to mourn. Maybe it's something closer to a gift you never noticed you were given. Somewhere in the wiring of every human being who has ever lived, there was a version of you who loved before you could describe love, who was afraid before you could name fear, who learned the rules of an entire world before you had a single word to explain any of it. You don't remember your first birthday, but your brain does in its own way. It just never learned how to tell you.